It's Carnival in Guyana. This often overlooked corner of South America is celebrating. The annual Mashramani, as it's called here, also commemorates the birth of the Republic. But this year, maybe there's a reason for a few extra smiles. Because soon this small nation may become a little less forgotten. Out to sea, what's been dubbed a motherlode of oil has been discovered. It's worth $70 billion at current market prices. A massive windfall for a country which has never previously produced oil and is home to just 800,000 people, a third of whom live under the poverty line. But with this newfound wealth will come responsibility. Much of that rests on the shoulders of the President, David Granger, and his senior advisors. History will judge whether they handle this gift well or not. Will this nation prosper, or might it suffer the so-called resource curse, whereby the spoils of natural resources feed corruption, inefficiency, and ruin? We went to Guyana's Natural Resources Ministry. For decades, not a great deal has gone on here. Guyana currently produces modest amounts of bauxite used to make aluminium and gold. But now Raphael Trotman, the Minister of Natural Resources, is the man everyone wants to talk to. So how much oil has Guyana found?
It's between the range of 800 million to 1.4 billion barrels, so it's quite a lot.
Well, that's more than quite a lot. For a small country like Guyana, that's surely a transformation.
It is. It is.
So what are you going to do with this?
Well, we're in the process of preparing for what is obviously going to be a windfall, but with windfalls, of course, there are dark clouds that can come with those, and we've been studying this whole phenomenon of the resource curse. And of course, looking at issues of transparency, corruption, what projects we'll be spending on. So essentially, we have crafted a sovereign wealth fund bill, which we hope to reveal to the public soon and take to Parliament later. And we are going to identify what we think are national projects that we can spend money on, in addition, of course, to saving. So the fund will manage the oil revenue, and we are ensuring that we do have generational transfer, that there's money to be spent by our grandchildren and great-grandchildren and their offspring, that we'll have some transformational projects that can keep the country going long after the last drop of oil is pumped and sold.
The find, worth 15 times Guyana's current GDP, was made 120 miles offshore by a consortium of international oil companies led by Exxon from the United States, as well as Hess, also from the US, and the China National Offshore Oil Corporation. This was the President visiting the Liza site where the first significant find was made. Already it's been agreed that profits will be shared 50-50 between the oil companies and Guyana.
We are on a bit of an accelerated program, and so we're hoping that by 2020 to 2021 we can have first phase of the development of the Liza well. That means pumping between 50 to 100,000 barrels per day, and as things progress we can move upwards from there.
There are, of course, various hurdles to be overcome before those hoped-for transformational revenues start actually arriving here. First of all, there's the question of whose oil this really is. Neighbouring Venezuela has a long-standing claim against Guyana. It argues 40% of Guyana's entire territory is in fact rightfully Venezuelan. If that disputed area is extended out to sea, as Venezuela says it should be, it includes one of the discovery areas. The whole boundary dispute looks set to go to the International Court of Justice next year. Minister Trotman says the controversy will not hold Guyana back.
our primary and only focus is getting the resource out of, well, in this case, the bottom of the ocean. We don't believe that where these are located, in the first instance, that there's any claim whatsoever. And secondly, as to the wider claim, we don't believe it has any merit.
But even putting that dispute aside, some are suggesting that this nation, with its zero experience of oil exploration and production, may be rushing too fast into this. Nigel Hughes, a lawyer and representative of Guyanese businesses and civil society, is worried that ordinary Guyanese people don't realise what's about to happen to their country.
I don't think there's an appreciation, even at a rudimentary level, of what oil will mean and the cash flows from it. As a citizen, I have concerns about many things. One of them, of course, is the level of disclosure. I don't think there has been as full disclosure as they ought to be by the government. Certainly, I know we don't have the institutional framework. I don't see a rollout of a public education program about what oil means. One of the concerns we have, of course, is that there's talk about sovereign wealth funds. We don't know how they're going to be established, when, what type.
One of Hughes's main concerns is connected with the unusual politics of this country. Guyana, a former British colony, has been independent since 1970. Its population is around 40% people of East Indian origin and around a third of African descent. The two ethnicities mix without much problem most of the time, except during elections, when still the majority of people vote according to their race. That has led to a particularly contentious political system, with the pendulum in successive governments swinging from one ethnic group to another. And that undermines long-term planning of just the sort needed now.
The mandates of the political cycle, for example, especially in Guyana where we're racially divided, is every 5 years. So our decision-making gets driven by 5 years. But worse than that, because we have had a long history of division, we're less likely to reach consensus because somebody may see short-term strategic gain without paying attention to the long-term needs of the country. And that is a problem.
Minister Trotman pledges his government is taking a long-term view.
We take the view that the resource belongs to every single Guyanese, and the government is simply the steward, the custodian, on behalf of every Guyanese. And certainly, as a government, we will be consulting with and briefing the opposition and all stakeholders to ensure that there is inclusion in decision-making, that everyone is kept up to date, and that we all can benefit. And this is why the law has already been written to ensure that there's going to be benefit sharing to all 10 regions of Guyana, and that every citizen shall be entitled to an equal part or share in the revenue.
There is another pressing concern, and that involves preserving the environment of this under-visited, underpopulated nation. 85% of Guyana is spectacular, largely unspoilt rainforest. Its coast, naturally protected by mangroves, is the setting for exceptionally rich biodiversity. But it is vulnerable. If there was an accident and an oil spill in the exploration area, this is where the oil would come. Annette Arjun from the Guyana Marine Conservation Society is worried that the oil that might make this country rich brings danger too.
Because we have such a pristine coastal area, 421 kilometers long, with a lot of vegetation such as mangroves, we have a huge part of our coastline, Region 1 especially, is all intact, mature mangrove forests. In terms of the mangroves, you also have a very rich biodiversity. The mangrove serves as home to birds of all kinds. There are fishery nurseries. So yes, in terms of a spill, it will impact our biodiversity in a big way. Generally, we have never had much research done in our marine environment, so we know very little of what exists out there other than the fish that we eat. or the sea turtles that we've been protecting for 40 years. So it's hard to sort of know what could be impacted if you don't know what exists there. That is also compounded by the fact that our regulatory agencies aren't very strong in terms of marine regulation and oversight at the moment, and that capacity needs to be a lot stronger than exists presently. So with the oil industry being new and emerging, those would be my first two concerns.
We went to the area that the government says could see the most direct benefit from the oil find. Crab Island, once fought over by British and Dutch settlers. Now nothing much happens here. Even the crabs have gone, say the locals. It's been selected for a possible $500 million of investment and construction of an oil service centre backing up the operation out to sea. Its main advantage is it is a safe, deep water harbour. Amongst the small fishing community here, we didn't find much euphoria, but plenty of cynicism.
So you're worried about the oil?
Yes, I'm very worried about the oil because we won't get a catch anymore.
Why not?
The oil will float on the sea. Maybe it will leak, start spreading the sea, and then you can't get a catch. The fish will keep there. Because we go there and fish in.
Right.
Actually where the oil is coming.
It may slow down the fishing, but it may change the country a lot. It
Then the government have to pay we off.
has to pay you off, yeah?
Yeah, and give we a job on the oil company. It will make the country rich, not the people.
All the fishermen, if they find a job for all the fishermen in Guyana who work for the oil company, we think that better. So they will get job because when fish stop catch, they don't get nothing. They're all about the street and knock about the smoke dope.
On the way back to Georgetown, we were reminded just how weak the infrastructure of this country is. Only 1/10 of its roads are currently paved. In the capital, we came across a mix of high expectations for better times and concern.
And you think it's going to work? You think it will change this country?
We're hoping that it does. Yeah, put us out there. Yeah.
For me, I think it's a big plus for Guyana because it would create the necessary income that we need to push this economy forward, and it would create jobs for lots of people, hopefully.
Oil is money, but if they use it in the country, it's going to be very good. But if they put it in their pocket, that would be very bad. The country would still live one way.
I hope we're not deluding ourselves that we could actually get it right from early up. So this is why I think we need a much more stronger civil society engagement, stronger engagement with our administration, whichever one it may be. Real airtight mechanisms with people who have high integrity and knowledge and experience to develop policy that the nation benefits from, not one particular group or the other. And this is where we need to start thinking about Guyanese and not, along ethnic or political, alignments.
Minister Trotman says he has no problem with the skeptics, but he says, make no mistake, this country is on the brink of change.
We're not here to say, look at who we are now. I think we are prepared to say, however, that our time has come, and we are very grateful, and we have had many years of sacrifice. We've just celebrated, in fact, 50 years of independence from colonialism. It is a necessary step in our future development as a young nation.
A young nation that is entering a new era.